And it is Transform Your Relationships Live. I'm Laura Rubenstein here with the amazing and fabulous Dr. Roberta Shaler. Hi, Roberta.
Hi, Laura. I don't know how I got upgraded to fabulous, but delighted to be here with the amazing and wonderful Laura Rubenstein.
Thank you. It's just my admiration here shining through. And it's my energetic feeling of where we are right now. It's springtime, and there's this renewed sense of hope and enthusiasm. There's like spring cleaning. I mean, I have energy for that now. So I think that's kind of this time of year.
Well, it is for many people. Of course, this is a very different year. We have things that are going on that have never gone on before. And last spring, we had just gotten into this and we didn't expect to still be in it a year later. So
Exactly.
I don't know if that has dampened anyone's enthusiasm for spring, but I certainly hope not. I hope that you're now seeing that, all right, we've been through a whole lot and there may well be light at the end of the tunnel by this fall or so on.
Absolutely. And so, a lot of people will take time, especially if you're still taking time to be home, to do that spring cleaning. So I thought we could talk about it from the sense of spring cleaning ourselves, in a sense.
Well, yes. I mean, we get the opportunity to spring clean our internal selves, and we get our emotional selves, our mental selves, our spiritual selves. We get to do some spring cleaning, some sifting and sorting, and finding out what's in the nooks and crannies. And do I want this anymore? Would I like to make space and welcome something different? So it can be a really lovely time for that kind of thing. I know I spent Sunday actually cleaning. So,
And and I spent some time over the weekend weeding, and what you're talking about makes me feel like, okay, weeding those things out of our lives physically, emotionally, decision wise, energetically, people wise. It could be, how do we weed out the things that are not really serving us and not really feeling like they need to be there. In fact, I just love looking at a little plot of area that I just weeded and how much better it looks and how much better I feel. It's like, oh, it was so gratifying to get that done.
oh, absolutely. I deep cleaned one of the bathrooms here and I thought, oh, this just feels so good. It feels fresher, it looks better, it's like every little bit got cleaned. And I think that when we apply that to other areas of our life, that there are things that need to be weeded out. We might find like maybe I'm just not comfortable with that. Or have you ever had that experience, because I sure have, of maybe there's a whole lot of things on the dining room table, and every time you walk by it, it's an energy leak. You go, oh, look at the table. And then you get to work and clean the table. It only took you 20 minutes. And you wondered why you had lost all that energy walking by it for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that requires weeding out. Like, where are my energy leaks?
Mm.
Where are there things that I'm procrastinating or I'm putting on the to-do list, on the someday list, that if I just simply got them done, I would have more mental freedom, more emotional freedom. So those are important areas to look at. It may be your dining room table, or it may be that there's a conversation that needs to be had with someone significant in your life that you keep circling but never have. And that could be an energy leak because you're afraid what'll happen. But if you never have the conversation, you always have the energy leak and you don't find out what would happen. And there's a chance things could get much better. So there's a place that we may need to do a little weeding. Or maybe we've given up on self-care practices. Maybe those have gotten a little slack. Maybe there's a place to revisit, you know.
Yeah. And I like the idea of starting with ourselves first, because if we take time to do our own clearing of the dining table, clearing of our mind, taking care of ourselves, doing the self-care thing, then we can come to those conversations with a clear mind versus all this clutter and weight and energy leaking going on and feeling exhausted and like we're going to have this conversation with somebody. I think it's wise to choose to say, oh, wait, what needs to be cleared here? So then I can
Yeah.
be more clear there. And
Yeah.
Mickey's saying release tolerations like a mess on the table. We tolerate lots of things that can be quickly resolved. And they, yeah, so pick something. I
Yeah.
think that the other thing it does for your one's esteem and psyche is like, I got this. I have the power to change, to make something happen that looks beautiful or can resolve something in my life. And so then you have more of a sure footing going out into the world.
I think too, when you do something for yourself, sometimes you're at the bottom of your list. You know, you're busy doing things for other people or taking care of business or whatever, and you don't give equal weight to how you could do something for yourself that would energetically lift you.
Mm,
And that could be the dining room table. It could be any number of things that you walk by or you're not attending to, or that every time you think about it, you say, oh, I should go for a walk. But I put it off from day after day after day. So I think, Mickey's right. Hi, Mickey.
mhm.
I think that we do tolerate things that we don't even realize we're tolerating. And that falls into the energy leak category for sure.
Yeah. And one of the reasons I love the title of today's topic, Spring has Sprung, What Are You Growing Now? Is when I was in college and I was having a tough time and I call up and I talk to my dad and over the best wisdom he could give me at the time, which it was so, it was almost like a riddle to me, but it helped me because I had to figure it out for myself. He's like, work on the garden, Laura, work on the garden, you know? And I knew, and I think I clarified a little bit. He's like, work on yourself. Don't worry what the girls down the hall are doing and who's not including you in something and who's, you know, where you got turned down or got a bad grade in something, just work on yourself. You'll be fine. Like there was a sense of feeling rooted, like work on the garden, get connected to yourself. And I think that this is a really good time to do that.
I think so too. A lot of people avoid themselves. They just go in broad, wide circles around themselves and distract themselves with whatever is out there, and that all becomes more important. And really, I mean, you are the author of your life. So if you are not writing on the page what you actually want, what is the story of your life? Is it that, oh, well, this happened and that happened and I bounced around like I was a ball in a pinball game? Or am I actually saying, no, I'll be the one who pulls the trigger and makes the pinball of my life go? And that's an opportunity that we have. And we want to take advantage of that opportunity because that's our personal power. And I think it's important to recognize that, on my Facebook page, my profile page, I put my own personal definition of that here. And it says every moment we have the opportunity of choosing our thoughts, words, actions, relationships, and points of view. That's personal power. And I think if we stay focused on that, that can really help us. That's how we create our life.
Mm,
When we have a strong place that includes those things that we have thought through, that we're up to date with, that we are aware of and keep in our consciousness, and we keep upgrading them or weeding the garden and fertilizing it, we have to remember that not only do we need to take the weeds out, but we need to fertilize it so that we spend some time there nurturing and nourishing ourselves so that we can grow the life that we most want. And it's not just responding to what's going on in life, is who's responding to what's going on in life. And that's where that weeding and nurturing and fertilizing makes all the difference, because if you do that and something happens in your life, you respond differently than if you don't know what you think or don't know what you want or don't have any boundaries. You just don't know. Maybe you don't even think through your values. Maybe you haven't thought through your values. And when you think through your values, that's a decision-making tree, because once you have gone, and I have many of my clients, not all of them, do an exercise that I created around values so that they can have that decision-making tree, which is, all right, this happened. Where does it fit in my values, right? And so I can think about it from that point of view, not as an isolated thing, but how does it fit in my value structure? So these are important pieces because that's weeding your garden, like really knowing what you've brought into your garden, not letting things creep in or
Yeah. I see like this beautiful garden and the things in it that are the main features are your values, and the weeds have distracted, can be distractions or those patterns that we've gotten into habits that, yeah, we say we have these values, but we're really tending, to grow these weeds. We're creating a very fertile environment for these weeds because we're just propping these values up. We're not living them. We're not tending to them.
yes, and maybe they're just words. If
Right.
those values don't come to life, they're just words on a page. I remember back in the day when I was doing business consulting and I'd go into a business and we'd take a full day, the whole staff, and they would write their mission statement and their value statement and all of that. And I'd go back for the 6-month checkup and I'd say, well, how are you doing with those things? What things? That's what we did on that day. We made a piece of paper. Everyone went, yay. And then they went about their business, forgetting totally what was written on the page. And so it's important for us to revisit our operating system. And, a lot of the work that I do with people is finding where their operating system had malware and viruses and Trojan horses, and helping them update the system to defrag their disk drives and kind of, kickstart again, reboot. And if we don't do that, we may be living to someone else's expectations. We may not have revisited things now that we're in a different phase of life. And that demonstrates self-care.
Yes. Instead of living up to someone else's expectations or tiptoeing around them, it's really about focusing on your own journey and creating the life based upon your values and
Mm-hmm.
and your goals. Like you said, today is the opportunity to think about what are we growing for this year? Is this going to be a year of personal goals and spiritual relationship, um, physical, environmental, emotional goals?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah,
Yeah. What's your future? Your future doesn't have to be 20 years from now. Your future is 6 months from now. And that's very, very important to take charge of.
yeah,
If you are as prepared as you can be because you know yourself well and you're up to date with yourself, you're going to respond to things in a much more equitable fashion.
right.
You're not going to get knocked over as easily. Things are not going to be as questionable. You won't give your power away. And I mean that personal power that says, no, this is me. This is how I prefer to do things. I'm interested in how you prefer to do things. See if we can find some common ground. But I am not going to lean in and do things your way without any consideration for how does it fit with me. And for many people, that's a new way of being. And this is a great time. Any time is a great time, but spring is that nice new beginning. So maybe we can spring up being more familiar with ourselves.
Yeah, and it takes practice, and
Yeah.
got, staying accountable and guiding. And I think one place to start might be to write down personal goals. Another telltale sign, though, that we get derailed by you know, the defragging, that we get derailed because we need to defrag. The little fragments have gotten in there of these patterns is I see, and tell me what you think about this, but I see people who are like, I'm so overwhelmed. I can't deal with this. And when they're in that state, it's because they don't have that guidance system that's helping them say no to things, say yes to other things, to have some sort of balance and self-care, to understand who they are. I mean, you can have a busy lifestyle, but not feel that sense of overwhelm, burden, emotional turmoil, right?
Yes. And, I've had people in my practice who come and say, I am so overwhelmed. I don't even know what I want. I don't know what I like. I don't even know what I do for fun, right? And if you've been in toxic relationships, they all wear you down, tear you down, put you down forever, and leave you exhausted, saying, which end is up? So, that's many times what we find in that situation. But I think for those of us who are maybe or maybe not experiencing toxic relationships, it is just wise to become acquainted with who you are now. One of the things that people ask me is they say, well, what should I do in response to this thing? Usually it's something like a toxic person. And I always answer the same way. And I say, well, who are you? And they say, what do you mean? I say, well, what are your value system? Here's an example. I often get asked by people who have toxic mothers or fathers, and they're adults. And so they say, I just heard that the person I've gone no contact with, my mother, for instance, has a life-threatening illness. What should I do? I don't know. Who are you? Right? And they say, well, what do you mean? What do you mean? And I said, well, I don't know. I mean, if you are a person, there's no right answer. You've been no contact, but what can you do without regret? If do you need to pay a visit, make sure everything is fine? Would it be too toxic for you to go and pay that visit and the pain would be too much? Your story, just be clear about it. What can you do without regret? Not that somebody says, well, you should go and do that, because let's not should on each other. There is no right answer, but who are you? When my mother was dying, who was, the bane of my existence, who I was a person who went and made sure everything was fine for her and was there every day and let her go through the journey she wanted, dying at home. But for other people, that would be the most toxic thing because they have no Teflon. I could walk in there. I knew who she was. I knew how she was going to be. I didn't have an expectation of her being different. But if you haven't done your work and you go into that situation, maybe you'll be wounded and re-wounded and just a mess, and that wouldn't be wise for you. So it's really important to know who we are and to know what we can and cannot do, what we want and what we don't want, and what our boundaries are. And then all the things like, what direction am I going? How's my relationship? How's my health? How's my work life? Where do I need to pay some attention? And these are great things to step up and ask right now.
And I think questions are a great place to start. It's a great place because it'll take you down that road to becoming aware of things you maybe have been feeling, but you had no clarity on. And when you can get clarity on that, like, what's going on here? What am I hearing? What am I taking in? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? We stop that insanity for a moment, take a breath, and say, oh my gosh, it's spring. I have an opportunity to tap in and work on my inner garden, my interpersonal garden here, and make it beautiful. And then if Teflon's available, great. If it's not yet quite developed, then, make those decisions. I think that's like brilliant advice.
Yeah, it's interesting. People, many times I'll get clients who have listened to the podcast, and I had one just the other day, and she said, I was going through this terrible time with my mother, and then I remembered what you said. Turn on the Teflon, turn on the Teflon. So I turned on the Teflon and I set my boundary and I set it in a text. And you know what? It worked. Sometimes we're so afraid that if we don't do what other people want us to do, life isn't going to go well. And it's not what we want to do, and it's not what we want in our life. So that's the weeding that we're talking about today.
Yes. So happy weeding, people. Happy weeding, happy fertilizing, happy seeding, happy nurturing, and then blossoming, right?
Yes, but once you get the weeds out and you get that ground prepared, then you have to prepare the soil. Like, no point planting in soil that's dead. So you've got to churn that all up. You've got to find out, am I in alignment with my values? Is this something that I can spring forth from? And then you have to choose what you plant, and what quality seeds are you putting in there?
Mhm.
You know, big things. What do I need? What do I want to harvest? What are things that I never want to plant again? And eradicate that. So all of those things hold our metaphor of this wonderful spring garden. So, what do you want?
I have this
What?
beautiful vision of this garden. The rocks in it are the values, and then if your values family, what do you how do you nurture the soil, and then what seeds do you want to plant as like your goals for that, right? And then what does it mean to have family, so that that only that grows in there, and you can act in alignment with that.
Mm-hmm. But there again, bringing consciousness to what you're planting, so important.
Right. And every step of the way, not shoving things under the rug, because weeds are going to grow there. Right.
Well, I don't have a rug in my garden, but I think that
Me too.
I think that the metaphors can be mixed there, because we do tend to, something gets into the weeds, or there's some corner somewhere that we don't look at for a while, and then we go and say, "Oh, what's happening here?" Well, now we have all kinds of pests, and that can infiltrate the garden and ruin other things that are growing well. So again, the metaphor holds, because if we don't get to the bottom of things and we don't sort things out, it will spread out into the other areas of our life. And that's the exciting thing. I mean, I think it's exciting fresh start. I've always been a fresh start person. I don't dwell on what happened. Okay, let's start fresh. But you can get trapped in the past. And if you get trapped in the past, your view of the present and the future is a little minimal. And because, I've said before, and that there's a reason that we have a small rear view mirror and a really large windshield. So we can see where we are and where we're going, and every now and again check in the past. But some of us tend to check in that rearview mirror a lot, and we'll bump into the present, and the future will not be something that's very secure. So it's important for us to do that weeding to make sure that we're not focused on the rearview mirror. That's what therapy is for. That's where you focus on the rearview mirror, so that you can not have to check very often at all, because all that stuff is in the distant past.
Right. Yes, when you can get really clear on what's happened in the past and make sense of it in the future and know where you want to go, you have way more personal power, like you're saying. I loved your quote, by the way, that you read earlier. I'm going to put it on the screen if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because we can choose our thoughts, our words, our actions, our relationships, and our personal points of view, and that is personal power. It's the choice we make. Those choices make for our feeling powerful in and of ourselves. And we have a right to do it. I know you've said we deserve to take up space here on this planet, and this is
Yeah.
how we do it.
Yeah. Yeah. We have to get in touch with that, though, Laura, that we really do deeply believe that we deserve to take up space and draw breath on this planet, because otherwise we'll be apologetic for our beingness.
Yeah.
And that is not a very healthy or happy way to live. Is it okay for me to be here? Can I speak up?
Or we can be doormat,
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what will happen. We'll be
Right.
very passive, and then we will be a great target for toxic people, and they'll come in and swoop in for control and power and manipulation. So you don't want to be that person,
Right.
And
That's
if
what
you
we're all
have
about, is
been,
preventing that.
yeah, and there's a lot more to that, of course, but
Yeah.
it still helps us to understand.
Yeah. And today's topic about, what are you growing in your garden? It's springtime. It's a really good onboarding for the whole world of working on yourself, handling toxic relationships, getting more effective in your whole beingness, so you can go out and do things that you really desire to do and dream of. And so it's really fun to do the show with you. And we have so many episodes that you can watch that have gone through a lot deeper topics too, on all kinds of tangents and tackling tough questions, really, especially dealing with tough people.
Mm-hmm.
And
And it's important too. I just want to add this to our spring theme. If you're not used to being with yourself, if you've been avoiding doing that, if you keep yourself busy, 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 notice that. It's a really good thing to see that I need to get comfortable spending time with myself, by myself. That's your primary relationship in life, is your relationship with yourself. And you want that to be a healthy relationship. So if by chance, you avoid sitting quietly and meeting yourself in the silence, or you're not comfortable journaling because, oh, well, there's something else I could be doing. Whatever you can do to recognize that spending time with yourself has value, so that you can figure out these things about, what do I want to plant so I know what I want to harvest. This is really important for us to do. And don't avoid it. Spring is a great time to say, I'm just going to go and sit in the garden and spend time by myself. I'm just going to go and sit on that hill and spend time by myself. And maybe I spend 20 minutes, but it's rich time. And don't get into the place where you're checking your watch every 2 minutes. Am I 20 minutes up yet? Know that this is valuable time. You are an important person in your life. Know that person, and then help that person make choices that make that person happier and more resolved and living more fully. And that's the opportunity.
yes, of that, make choices that make you happy from a
Yeah.
deep knowing, not from avoiding.
Yes, and remember, happiness is an inside job. When clients come to me and they say, well, he doesn't make me happy anymore, or she doesn't make me happy anymore, not their job. Well, what do you mean? That's what it's all about. No, it isn't. Happiness is an inside job, so that you can respond to other people in an equitable manner, understanding that they can't push you off your game.
Right.
And happiness is something you provide for yourself. So back to the question, do you know what makes you happy? Do you know what brings you peace? Do you know what you value? If you know yourself, then you can make sure that you live in alignment with those things. And then guess what? You'll be happier.
And that's what life's about, understanding that piece. When you're happier, you're better for other people too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But people can't come along and knock you around. You walk down the street with confidence and joy, and it's not like, people are bumping into you and pushing you against the wall and all kinds of ways. No, you're solid. And yeah, sure. I mean, we all get bumped against the wall occasionally, but let's have that be occasional, not regular.
Yeah. Let's do it. And if you need any support, of course, we're always here for you at transformtoday.com and Dr. Roberta at forrelationshiphelp.com.
Yes, come and find us. Come and listen to Save Your Sanity podcast. You can go to saveyoursanitypodcast.com. If you're in a toxic relationship, or you had a toxic parent, lots of things there for you. And Laura has the wonderful feminine power cards. We have lots of things to support you, and we're here for you, as Laura said.
Have a great week. Bye for now.
Happy spring.
Happy spring.